Okay, so I thought I'll keep it brief because I'm sure everyone's going to want to go home now, right? It's at the end of the day, you want to get away from the traffic, get home. Oh, I mean, go to the kitchen. But anyway, there we are. So we're going to be looking at the top 5.5 features. I'll just put my timer on now for 35 minutes. I'm hoping to get it done in less than 35 minutes. My name's Bettool Jabur, and just a little bit about my background. I've worked in the industry for 9 years. So I've worked on sports stadia, educational establishments. I've worked within the residential industry as well. And I'm a chartered architectural technologist by trade. So every time you mention something about architecture, I was like, yay, go on, let's go for it. But yeah, I'm architecturally biased, so I'll try and hold myself back because I can see there's MEP and structural on the call as well. In terms of my Autodesk accreditation, I'm a certified instructor, and I'm a certified instructor as a silver member as well. I'm also a certified Autodesk user of Revit, and my main areas of focus on my day-to-day jobs is to do with training, virtual instructor-led training as well now since COVID-19, and consultancy, providing support, testing, and own technology. So my main areas of software are Revit and BIM 360. So what I'm going to try and do today is go through a journey of how things started before I go into the 5.5 tips of what's new on or developed within 2021. So in terms of the journey of Revit, Autodesk have constantly asked, what is it that we can do to improve? And we've given a lot of feedback. From the MRUG sessions that was live in Manchester, we was always kind of debating on what features are needed, and we've seen some of those features develop. But if we have a look from 2005 and 2006, Revit structure and MEP were developed. So it's no longer just architecture. So structure and MEP was there within Revit as well. 2009, API was created to let developers build functionality on top of Revit. So this is where we get our own technology and plugins that we might have seen previously. Then we have 2010, when conceptual massing tools had arrived. When I first seen this diagram, I actually joined Revit in the 2010 feature. So I was thinking, when was concept massing never there? So it's quite interesting for me to see that it was developed in 2010. 2012, construction modeling came through. 2016, which is actually quite recent, I think, we started to look at the cloud and BIM 360 design and cloud models. So in terms of collaboration within the cloud. And then 2018, whoops, apologies about that, went forward too quickly. 2018, steel detailing came along, and as we've seen that great demonstration as well from Rob. And now, what has happened now? So this is kind of building us up to the 5.5 points of what is 2020 looking like, or 2021 packages. Okay, so let's look at the top 5.5 new or developed features within Revit 2021. These are 5.5 that I've picked personally, not Autodesk, not anyone else. I just thought, let me go in and see what I think is actually some nice features to raise today. We have scheduling. So within scheduling, I quite like how we can now freeze the header, we can zoom in, and we can have striped rows. So we're kind of saving our eyes throughout the process of this. So I'm calling this one number 5 of my 5.5. So within these aspects of Revit, what we're going to be looking at in a moment is how to freeze the header. So I'm just going to play this video. And at the moment, you can see when you scroll down your schedules, you can't see anything at the top. Is there a width? Is it a height? And we want to be able to go in and keep that header on there. So we've now got a freeze header, which is a new feature, new button. And as you're scrolling down, you can now see what parameters you are looking at within the schedules. So that hopefully should be a nice quick starter of one tip or trick that we can utilize the next time we use 2021. Yay, Kevin's happy with that one. Zoom in. So we're on a Zoom call, but it's not about Zoom. It's about zooming in your schedules. So let's have a look to see how this works. At the moment, looking at that is quite daunting. It's quite small. You want to be able to look at your model, at your model parameters much better without needing to have a magnifying glass. So You can now hold down Control and use your wheel to zoom into your schedules until you find a scale that's suitable for your eyes. Okay, so you can zoom in and out of schedules now. Quite straightforward. Okay, moving on to the next item. I've kind of combined these two, so stripe rows and schedules on sheets. These two are quite connected, so I thought I'll keep them together on this particular one. So let's have a look at how we can stripe rows. So as you're scrolling down, things can get blurry as you're going down the page and you think, well, what row am I on? Did I miss that? Did I mistype something? We have a new feature. You can now go into your formatting and you can change whether appearance, you can change whether it's going to be colored on the first row or second row. The hardest job you're going to have here is picking a color. Which color is going to suit you and which color is going to be nice and soft on your schedule. Once you've found your color, you can then go in and press OK, and we'll be able to see that our rows are now striped. You can now scroll down, have a look through rows without kind of skipping and going through different areas of your schedule. Looking at the door schedule on a piece of paper, what we have here is the ability to actually see those stripes as well come through on your sheet. If we don't like that, and if we don't want to have that, we can always untick the default setting of having it switched on the sheets. There we go. Okay. One other kind of important thing to be aware of, and just out of the box settings, when you have your stripe rows on a sheet and you select it, the colored rows will appear kind of masked on your sheet when you're moving things around. It's a bit of a downer for me, but to be honest, it's not really going to raise any problems for anyone else, I don't think. Okay, so that's just out of the settings, out of the box settings. Let's move on to what I've classed number 4 in my top 5.5 features of 2021. We have got views enabling the view filter. So with this particular one, we can see here that we've got red and blue walls, could be for fire rating, and we might want to keep the filters on, but we want to switch filters on the template, but we might want to switch off the visibility graphics. If I switch off, well, first of all, we've got this new feature of enable filter. If we switch off the visibility and apply that, we'll be able to see that the walls disappear as well as the filter. We don't want that to happen. We want to have our walls back on. If I try it with a different, with the enable feature, then what that will do is it'll enable my filter while maintaining my walls within my drawing. So I can still have my template as it is with the filter set up, but I can always switch them off while I'm modeling if I wanted to. So that was the views enable views filter. So you have to go into visibility graphics to get there. The next one is not really a new feature within Revit 2021, but I will run through how to get to that feature and how to utilize it. But there's some new development that has happened within there within 2021, which is why I've raised it. So it's kind of a developed feature. So this one's called Path of Travel, and you can find it on the Analyze tab, and we can go into Path of Travel. You just need to have a look at your line style to recognize that you are within the path of travel. The properties palette is really important. It will tell you the length, the time, and the speed in which you're traveling at and what components we're looking at. Okay, so here I want to take a snapshot from that part of my cafeteria to the two different types of stair locations. And we can see that maybe one of them might be slightly longer than the other one. So we just need to go in and be able to have a look at the length, and we can see that the length of that particular path is much greater at 40, which is over the 28 mark of what the other path was. Okay, so within visibility graphics, if I go into filters, I want to be able to visually see which paths are actually longer. So I could go in and create a filter name, and then I can assign this to a line type of path of travel. Then I could put in a rule to say that if the time is greater than a certain amount of time, then I can always go in and edit that. So the time is set to 24 seconds in this particular example. And then I'm just going to add that filter to this particular view. Just going to change the graphic override so that it's a solid red color and it'll bring to my attention what I'm looking for. And I'm just going to press OK. Now we can see that the path that is greater than a certain distance is now in time. That will take me longer to get to that piece of to that staircase will be now highlighted within red, within the color red. So we're going to be looking at creating a schedule of our path of travel. So I'm just going to take across all of the parameters, which I think there's a couple of new parameters that have now come into here in 2021. And the schedule's not telling me which one initially has got the greatest amount of time to get to that particular staircase. So I just want to pick out how to do that, go into conditional formats, and I'm just going to put in the same kind of formula, so greater than 24 seconds, and I want to have that one come into me as a red color on my schedule. Okay, so we can see that's now red, is over the 24-second mark, and I could just go in there and have a look at my line that's in question, the line that's greater than what we was looking for. Okay, so what if I have an obstacle in my path, a new obstacle? If, for example, I move this set of table and chairs into the path of travel, I would now want to go in and update it. But you have to do this per line, or you can right click and select all of the lines and it will update it. And this is where the new feature comes in, and you could go in and add some new waypoints, which previously you couldn't do. So if you want to slightly change the path of travel, that's the main new feature that you need to have a look at. Okay, so once the path of travel is adjusted, if you decide that you don't really need some of these waypoints, you can actually go in and delete those waypoints. So again, that's a new feature as well that has come in Revit 2021. And just the final note about route analysis settings, you can define what is an obstacle and what is not. So in this particular case, a door is not an obstacle, so we'll run through it. And you can define other items to be that as well. So if you've got something that's not going to be hindering your path of travel, you can always undefine that as well. Okay, so that was our path of travel. Moving on to number 2, which is cloud in terms of BIM 360 Europe. Okay, so with this one, I've not got a video on it, but there's a couple of things that we need to note really. All BIM 360 modules are now accessible or operatable within EU servers instead of the US server. And but this is only for Revit or software of 2021 plus. So that's not going to be previous to that. So in terms of security, some clients are not able to use BIM 360 because it was housed within the US server. We're looking to make sure that those who are using 2021 who couldn't use it because of the US server can now use the EU server. So all of the data is housed within the EU. And in terms of using, if you are going to take on board the EU server, we need to just be aware that the content between your US and your EU server is not compatible. You cannot kind of move them from one to another across the system. So if you need to have content associated with, oops, apologies about that. If you need to have content associated with a project primarily stored within the US and some in Europe, then you'll have to have 2 BIM 360 hubs or tenants, one with the US and one with the EU. So that's just something to watch out for 2021. Okay, so we are now moving on to what I think is one of the best features of Revit 2021, and that is to have slanted walls. So in this particular eye project, what I've done was look at how I can open the eye and how I can close the eye. So looking at playing this video, there we go. So this particular wall, we've got a new feature over here of slanted, of cross-section, which you can change to slanted, and you can now see the angle for vertical, so you can change it. So slowly, the bottom eyelid has now moved down the screen. So we've got that shading in there. If I want to do the same for the top eyelid, then what we can do is we can go in and put a slanted on there. And again, if I put in 10 degrees for this one, we can see that the eyelid is actually moved down. But what we want to do is maybe open up the eye. So we can see in the 3D view how the walls have actually shifted and slanted with the degrees that we've specified. But if you type a minus ahead of the 10, this will also work within the negative. And there you go, the eye has slowly opened up within this particular wall. Windows can also follow with this. So windows have a new feature as well. So I'm just going to select all of the windows in this particular example and have a look in my properties palette. I can change it from being a vertical to a slanted type of window. There's no specifics for degrees. It'll just follow through with the degrees of the wall that you've previously specified. So again, I'll just do that on this side as well. So again, changing the orientation from vertical to slanted, and it will follow through with that shape of the walls. Okay, that takes us through to the half. So generative design, designing around constraints. So I'm only going to half explain this one because I'm only going to show the Revit side of things, and I'm only going to show half of it as well. So this is part of that presentation that I think is quite important with generative design. So generative design, again, it's not a new feature to 2021. If we look back to 2017, you've got Dynamo that run all the way through. There was Project Fractal and there was Project Refinery as well, but now generative design is integrated within Revit 2021, and Dynamo 2.5 ships with Revit 2021 as well. So there's three main key things here that we need to focus on. There's Dynamo, so if you know someone in your practice, or if you know Dynamo yourself, you can create a script or graph with regards to the goals that you want to set. So for example, COVID-19 and returning back to the office, you might need to kind of schedule a 2-meter distance in between desks in the office now. So you can create that as a goal, and then you can utilize Revit in order to have a look at how the context will be, will appear within your model. But in order to do that, you need to explore the outcomes using your generative design to see the results, to see the best suitable variables within your project. So let's just take a sneak peek of what that looks like in Revit. So first of all, under Manage, you'll have Create Study Now. And there's three main default ones, which is there with Revit 21. And so whether it's for Windows, in this particular case, I'm going in to do a cafeteria layout of desks. And I want to choose the method of optimize. And then I'm going to go in to select the room that I want those desks to be placed in. And then I'm going to select the desk instance. Then you can have a look at the average distance to exit. So I want to minimize that. I want to have views to the outside. I want to have the number of desks maximized, so within that particular space. And the generations, I want to have 10 generations of this. So I'm just going to generate that. And this can take some time. So it depends on the components that you've chosen and what it is that you want to do. So by the time you wait and wait and wait, and then sometime later, it will then generate some of these variants for you. And you can hover over, you can have a look to see how many variants have been created. You can hover over them and you can see the graph in terms of your variables that you wanted. So desk rotation, spaces between rows and things like that. And then you can go in and choose the correct one that you want. And then you can go and create your Revit elements from that. So your desks will then be created within your Revit space. And this is where I will leave it there. At the bottom of that screen, it says creating elements. And so in the background, that should now be populated in the correct place. So I'm not going to show you all. That's half of it, and that's it. So I'm not going to show you the desks on the page either. Okay, so in terms of what we've been through, summary, at number 5, we had schedules. So you can freeze, header, zoom in, and stripe rows. At number 4, we had views. So you can enable view filters and visibility graphics rather than switching them off. We have a developed path of travel. So you can now adjust the path that's automated. And BIM 360 has now got an EU function for BIM 360 design. So you can now collaborate in the cloud within the EU on 2021 packages plus. And slanted walls at number 1, you can now slant your walls and your windows can now follow through with that. And at the half, we have got generative design, which allows you to design around constraints. Leaves me to go with any questions.
I have one. I have one about the slanted walls. I haven't actually tested it myself, but I noticed in your example that there was some windows in there. And I know doors can be hosted in there as well, but what happens to the content? Does it doesn't adjust to the face, does it, in terms of the angle?
It does. It goes with the content as in
the
say
window.
if it was a door, the swing, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So would the window kind of like tilt back, or maybe that's something for a future release?
The entire component kind of shifts onto its side.
Okay.
So everything will be to a 10-degree slope, if you like.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you like me to run through that? Should we have a quick look?
If nobody else has got any other questions, then a quick look would be interesting.
Okay, let me see if I've got it. I'll just open a basic. Give me a second. Share my Revit screen.
In the meantime, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll come to you.
Okay, so you should be able to see my Revit screen now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll just put a slant on this one. Oops. 10 degrees. And I'll make sure that this one is slanted as well. Okay, so did you just see that just slightly?
You have to select the window and then...
Yes, yeah. So in the scenario, I selected all of them by right-click and selecting all, and then the whole window slants with it by the 10 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So does that answer your question, Kevin?
Yeah, it does.
Perfect.
Anybody else have a question?
So we've got some questions in chat. If Keith wants to ask the question. Keith, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Don't be shy, come on.
Okay, I'll ask Keith's questions for him.
Okay.
He said, is the time travel along the lines a US requirement? He's only ever dealt with distance. Can we use length instead of time for UK point of view?
Good question. You do have length on there, so you'll be able to see the length of your path of travel. But with regards to the seconds, I believe you can change it, but I haven't changed it myself. I think you can change it to the regulations that you have for your country. But I've not tested that. Yeah. Okay, hope that answers part of your question, Keith. Okay.
He's not unmuting, so we'll never know.
Okay, so I'll take the silence as there's no questions on that. So please do stay in touch. If you do have any questions and you didn't want to say it today, then please follow me on LinkedIn and ask me the questions and I'll try and get back to you. I can make these PowerPoints available as well if you need to have them. And or you can email me at bettool.jabur@symetri.com as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Okay, that's ahead of the time by 10 minutes. Yay!
Excellent. Well done. Thank you very much, Bettool. That was great.
No problem.